Holy smokes, we're starting Spidergwen. I'm so excited. They're all Yaya Han. I think these two are definitely Yaya Han. This is probably Yaya Han. I got this like 6 months ago, so I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure about these two. They were all in that kind of same section though, so. Good bodysuit pattern options are Riddle's pattern. The seam lines are just a little different. They're more like princess seams, and it has this weird like hip shape to it. And lastly, this Simplicity 1036 Batgirl Supergirl pattern. The Batgirl pattern is really good for a bodysuit. It's actually a shirt and leggings, but you can easily tape the pattern pieces together and make a full bodysuit that has no seam lines. So the top is flush, the pants are flush. It's very different from the bodycon cosplay bodysuits, but this is a really nice starting bodysuit pattern as well. Frickin' hell, let's make a bodysuit.
We're gonna start off making a mock-up. I decided to go with Riddle's pattern because it has a raglan sleeve, which is where the seam goes from the underarm all the way up to the collar, and I just thought that was more fitting for the style of Gwen. A cosplay like this with all of these little itty bitty pieces and all these little corners needs to fit really well and make sure the pieces line up. So you're gonna make a mock-up, sew it all up, and you will notice I only did one arm and one leg because that's all you need to do for a mock-up. Once you put it on, you need to make sure it fits. To do this, you need to put the bodysuit on inside out, and you're gonna pinch the seams in tighter to make sure they fit better. And then pin them in that new shape. You can use straight sewing pins, but then you risk them either falling out or them poking you, so I use safety pins. You're also gonna wanna draw on the new cut lines following the design of the reference photo. Once you have it fitted to you, to make things easier, I just took a Sharpie and marked my new seam lines, took my pins out, and then cut the whole thing apart. This time you're going to cut the old mock-up up on the new design lines. That way, this new mock-up is going to test how the actual design is going to look compared to the reference. And now, guess what? We make a second mock-up! That's right, a second mock-up to make sure this first mock-up worked right. Don't skip this step. Make as many mock-ups as you need to because it's really important to get the shape right. This is a very complicated bodysuit with a lot of parts and a lot of zigzags and points. And if it doesn't fit you right, it's going to be hard to adjust because then the lines won't match up and it's not going to look very good. Final adjustments for this mock-up were to draw the lines on the back since I had to put it on a mannequin and then hand draw them on with the Sharpie because I couldn't do it while it was on my body. Put your second mock-up on and adjust it a final time. Make sure it fits snugly and all the lines and pieces are where you want them to be. Now it's finally time to transfer your mock-up pattern to your final fabric. The mock-up can still be a bit wonky from your last final adjustments. However, what I like to do is pin down the middle line, make sure it's straight, and then slightly pull each edge, make sure the fabric's not wrinkled, and then pin it down to your fabric. And once you have all of this transferred to your final fabric, we can cut it out and sew it together. I suggest starting with the easier parts like the legs and the arms and then the main body of the torso, and we're going to leave all of the pointy little sections for last. Alright pointies, let's get you over with. Alright, so when doing points, especially in such a complicated design, you need to be really accurate. So lay your pattern over your final fabric, and I just dotted with a disappearing marker the exact points of each corner, both inside and outside. Sewing the points is a little complicated, but easier than you think, and I'm going to walk you through it. To start, you can go ahead and pin together both sides of your fabric on the place we are going to start sewing. I'm using a very small zigzag stitch, and whenever you are done with your line, make sure your needle stops with it down in the fabric as close to that point as you can get. Try to be very accurate. With the needle down in the fabric, you can go ahead and lift your pressure foot up and twist your fabric around so that you can snip the inner corner. Snip it as close you can to the needle, but without touching the needle. Then you want to orient the fabric on the bottom the right way where you're going to sew it, and you're going to very carefully twist the fabric on top so that its edge line matches up with the bottom fabric. Layer them carefully and work out all the wrinkles as you go. As soon as it's straight, you can put your pressure foot back down and sew in a straight zigzag stitch down to your next point. Make sure you stop exactly on that point, lift your pressure foot back up, snip the inner corner, and then rearrange your fabric again. The main thing here is to snip the corner that is the inside corner. Sometimes that's the bottom fabric, sometimes that's the top fabric. So you're going to be adjusting as you go. But after a few corners, you'll get the hang of it and it'll be easier. And look at that. All of those difficult corners are down and in, and oh, they look so fresh and clean. No, but seriously, take your time, work it slow, take it apart and redo it if you have to. Oh, the corners just came out looking so pretty. I'm so proud of this. Anyway, once you have the hard part done, you can go ahead and add the legs and the arms. Easy after all those points and corners. Now, mainly the only thing we have left is the pink webbed fabric. These pieces are going to go on the inner elbow and the lining material of the hood. For this, I cut the fabric out first and then did the painted on design of the web. I couldn't find an exact color of minty blue that I liked, so I ended up using a mix of fabric paint, acrylic paint, and fabric medium to mix into the acrylic to make it better adhere to the fabric. Also, one of the blue paints is glow in the dark, so under a black light, all my webs are going to glow. It's going to look so cool. Oh, I'm so excited. I haven't done that yet, but I'm excited to do that. Anyway, get a good color of paint mixed up, and to make this easier and the lines really clean, I put this into a very small piping bottle. I got these off of Amazon and I use them all the time for projects like this. You could paint it on by hand with a brush. This was just easier. And after some testing, this paint did not stick to this shiny matte fabric. I was very upset. However, I really liked this pink fabric. I liked the way it looked, but because it was matte, the paint couldn't soak in and adhere to the fabric and it peeled right off. I was very, very angry, but you know me, I'm a fighter and I wanted to use this fabric, so I found a way to make it work. My solution was to have a small zigzag stitch go through the pink fabric. I did it zigzag so that it would stretch with the fabric and not rip, and that way the paint could actually attach to the stitching through the fabric and not peel off. It was a lot of extra work, but in the end, I could use the pink I wanted, the blue webbing came out pretty, and it was worth it. Now that paint needs to dry, so I'm going to move on to making some gloves. By all means, you can make very simple gloves by putting your hand down, tracing the outline, cutting out two pieces, and sewing them together. However, I'm doing a more complicated glove. My gloves have a separate thumb and a fourchette. That's the long strip of fabric that goes in between the front and back, and it just gives more room for your fingers, and the gloves end up looking a little nicer. It's a little bit more work. Okay, it's definitely a lot more work to do this kind of glove, but they end up looking better and being more comfortable. Always double check the fit before you start trimming so you can add or take away if needed. And once it fits really well, go ahead and trim all the seam allowances down because you don't want any extra bulk in your fingers. Now we're moving on back to the pink webby parts. I went ahead and sewed each edge into the arm and top stitched it down as well before sewing the arm tube together. And because the fabric is stretchy, you can kind of stretch the fabric in between if it doesn't quite line up to make it lay flat, but you want to try to get the webbing to line up in priority 1. Same with the hood, although you're not going to see it as much as the inner arm. Line up the back of the webbing, stitch it up, and I also stitched the front closed as well and left the neck open. Again, we top stitched the front of the hood to keep it laying nice and clean. I actually went over the entire bodysuit and top stitched all of the points where the black met the white, especially on the front and on the back. I don't think I did the hips. Wow. I guess I need to go back and do that. I forgot that. But you do want to top stitch everything down to keep all of the pieces laying flush and looking clean. And finally, we get to attach the collar and the hood onto the top of the bodysuit. Hood first, then collar, so that the hood lays outside of the collar, because that's what the design looks like. And finally, we get to add a zipper to the back. Well, actually, we're adding 2 zippers, one to the bodysuit and one to the hood, so that way the whole back of the bodysuit opens up and you can get into it. Oh, and lastly, I did add little elastic hoops around the arms, so that way my sleeve doesn't ride up and you don't see any skin underneath my gloves. And yeah, you could attach the gloves to the bodysuit, but I chose to keep them separate. That way I could wash them more frequently, because we know they're gonna get dirty. Your hands are white. Bad, poor choice, just design, only good for a cartoon, not good for actual real life cosplay. So that's why I separated mine. And if I'm at a convention, I can take off a glove and use my phone. And with that, this bodysuit is finished. And please check back for a second part to this video where I go over how I styled my wig, did my shoes, and as well as made my face shell mask thing, you know. Thank you for watching and sticking with my channel through this 2-year hiatus that I took. But you know what? I'm back and I'm making videos. So, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye!